This video is dedicated to the people who want to learn physics, science, or general STEM. I would like to say that this is a video for my past self, but knowing my past self, I wouldn't listen to me. But perhaps one of you out there will. How do I learn physics is a question that I get asked quite often on my Twitch stream or on my Instagram socials. I studied physics in Ireland as soon as the subject became available. So from secondary school, general science, to Leaving Cert physics, college general physics, master's in applied physics, a PhD, and then ultimately being a lecturer and a researcher of physics. I also have a degree in teaching, so I feel like I have some qualification in this area. But most of my advice today is not going to be so much as academic statements or research, but rather personal experience and advice. I'd like to start this premise by highlighting that I'm teaching you how to learn physics, not to study physics. There are two very different things. Although in an ideal world, they would be the exact same thing, the reality of the situation is that that's not entirely true. And so my first piece of advice would be, number one, be honest with yourself. And this is going to be the hardest one. You need to be honest with yourself when you don't understand something. You might have an illusion of something. You might study something and learn it off, but you don't necessarily understand it. And there's a lot of self-reflection that needs to occur before you truly understand what you don't understand. This is a really true and amazing power to have. Without this piece of advice, the remainder of the advice that I'm about to give will not be possible. This is extremely important. Be honest with yourself when you don't know something. My second piece of advice on how to learn physics: identify what you don't know, or otherwise know what you don't know. Although it sounds a bit redundant, it goes hand in hand with the first piece of advice with being honest with yourself. Once you identify the fact, you know what, I do not understand this topic, it'll be an extremely important step into even just starting where to study or where to begin your learning journey. Sometimes in the middle of a lecture or a class, you might have zoned out, you might not have paid attention, you might have fallen asleep, you wake up and your lecturer says, "So, does anyone have any questions on this topic?" And you don't even know what question to ask because you know nothing. Working backwards until you identify the point, here is where I lost track, here is where I have good foundation, but I don't know where to go forward, is extremely important. And again, goes hand in hand with being honest with yourself to identify this. My third advice: do not learn off, understand. This is something that I have only honestly begun to do as a teacher, as a lecturer of physics. Before, when I was studying for exams, I did learn off things. I had to do that to pass the exams. But once you begin to teach and once you begin to have passion and love for physics again, you realize that you know nothing then. If you're forced to learn off something, do you have a conceptual understanding of what's going on? I understand learning off names or parts of the apparatus of a machine, but learning off a theory makes it seem like you don't understand conceptually what the theory states. It's okay not to learn off constants, but hopefully you know in an equation what is directly or inversely proportional to one another. The equation expresses something fundamentally in physics, and what correlates to what and how should be part of your understanding of that realm. It might not be perfect, but at least enough understanding that if given enough time, you could figure these things out. So do not learn off equations. Do not learn off laws or theories, but rather try and understand them. For example, let's look at the ideal gas law. Look at the ideal gas law. The equation is PV is equal to nRT or PV is equal to NKBT, depending on which one you're looking at. You might not remember what Boltzmann's constant is, but hopefully you get a good instinct to understanding why pressure is directly proportional to temperature, or why pressure is inversely proportional to volume. You have an imagination or a visualization of gas particles and how they behave when you squeeze them, heat them, change their volume. This is where instinct is developed, and I think that's very important. Advice number 4 in how to learn physics. The fourth piece of advice goes in parallel with the other one, and it's just more so a specific practice, is that most of physics is solving mathematical problems. You have a problem and there's a whole lot of derivations, subbing in values until you get an answer, sometimes numerical, sometimes a derivation of a certain expression. The goal, however, is to understand the consequence of your answer. Have you ever stopped to think, well, I've derived this whole equation to determine the expression of the velocity of the electron in the end, but what does that actually mean? In most cases, in examination process, the exam question is designed to provide a eureka moment, an aha situation for you. And it's important to reflect on that aha moment. Always link your mathematical concepts to actual theory and ideas. My final piece of advice has only been developed in the last few years, with all my years of teaching on social media and lecturing. And finally, it is something that is called the Feynman method. The best way to truly learn something is to teach it. Now, most of us aren't going to be teachers or lecturers, but there is a skill involved in communicating your learning to someone who doesn't know it all. I get the honor of practicing this with my significant other, and I always know that if he doesn't get it, then absolutely no one will. If you're a little bit introverted and you don't have anyone to rely on, the rubber duck method is a great idea as well. Speak to a duck, like programmers do when they have a problem to solve, and explore where your logic begins to fail. And that goes in parallel with every other advice that I taught you. You identify what you don't understand then. You're honest with yourself, which is why you can identify this. And you don't learn anything off. You focus on understanding it instead. Like I said in the beginning of my video, ideally this is me spouting all of this advice for my past self. But like I said, I know my past self and I wouldn't have listened to me. Just remember to never stop learning. And it doesn't matter if it's physics or science, and if it's completely other subjects in the world. Keep your brain active, keep learning, never stop.